So it's really important for us at Joni that's why we always talk about showing what's possible when the world exists with menstrual justice. So what does that look like? It means having conversations with our kids like about menstruation like we do about nosebleeds, or what we do about cuts and bruises, or how we do fevers. Like, it's part of our healthcare. It's just a normalized conversation. It's about everyone having this conversation because it's how we all got here. It's not scary.
Hello and welcome to the Best You interview series. It's Gary here. Thank you very, very much, as always, for taking the time to join me. And today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by co-founder and CEO of Joni, Linda Biggs, who is here to discuss her entrepreneurial journey that is sparking a revolution in period care. Joni is a Canadian plant-based period care brand that she built with her co-founder, Jayesh. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah, you got it.
Yes. And Joni's earliest memories trace back to a Vancouver apartment building where her mother and grandmother worked to make ends meet, with her mother navigating life as a single immigrant parent, unable to find work in her trained field. That upbringing, shaped by sacrifice and community, became the emotional backbone of the company that Linda would go on to build. Joni is founded on three core values: unapologetic inclusivity. I honestly love that statement. I read it multiple times as I was preparing for today. The second one being radical transparency, and the third one being different on purpose. Through Joni's give back model, the company works toward period equity, aiming for everyone who menstruates to have bodily agency and access to safe period care. As a mother of two daughters, Linda has described feeling a deep pull to connect her daily work to the kind of world she wants to help create for them. Linda, thank you very, very much for joining me today. I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
I'm so honored to be here, Gary. What an introduction. I'm truly excited to chat.
Me too. Me too. So as I like to do is to get a wee bit of a background. I mentioned some of it. Of course, the brief highlights there. Why plant-based period care? What was the journey that got you interested in this and so passionate to get to the spot where Joni is today?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of other founders and a lot of other entrepreneurs, you really try to solve a problem that you're experiencing. But there was a long journey before Joni. So I had a very corporate career. I did all the right things. I checked off all the shoulds. I, should get a regular job and then, move up in that field. And I just never felt like it was the right place for me. I mean, I would, it would just got boring really quickly. And so I would move jobs every couple years. And that was seen as a big no-no at the time. I have a computer science background. But what it taught me was how I really am passionate about having an impact. Like, you think about what you're motivated by. And for me, it was like, I really just didn't want to be another cog in a machine. I really wanted to feel like I had autonomy and had an impact, a positive impact. So long story short, I got to a place in my career where I was looking to start something on my own. I had already worked with other female founders. I had helped them grow from that 0 to 1. And I thought, Linda, now's the time to invest in yourself. And I love how the universe works, because when you're ready, like what they say, when the student's ready, the teacher appears.
Yeah.
And in my case, Jayesh appeared, and we got introduced. And Victoria is a really small town. I mean, not that small, but small enough so that it's like 2 degrees of separation instead of 7 everywhere else. And we were introduced, and Jayesh he's a pharmacologist by trade, and he was taking his master's degree at UVic, and he was looking into this field. And we had several conversations, and during those conversations, I just kept envisioning my experience with period care, with menstruation, with the support or the lack of support, with my own journey in health. And I kept thinking, there is such a gap that I really feel like we can have an impact here. And it was really one of the first times where I allowed myself to kind of dream the dream and think crazy, like, let's think, what's the best case scenario? And so we decided to partner and took a leap on each other and launched what A lot of it as a natural consumer, I felt was missing in the market. And Jayesh, as a pharmacologist and really looking at product side, what he felt was really great, high quality products so that we can, instead of making people who menstruate choose between a product that it works, but is not necessarily good for your body. It's got a lot of plastic in it versus a product that's organic, but you actually don't know if it works. Oftentimes people complain that it doesn't work as well, but the products are better for you. Why can't we have both? Why can't we have a product that performs um, with those high quality, better for you materials, and one that a business that makes an impact that actually gives back to our communities in a way that's not just a marketing slogan, but that's actually woven into the fabric of the business model itself. And 6 years later, here we are.
6 years later, and I'm assuming the time has flown by to this particular point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's flown by. I mean, days are long. There are
Yeah.
some days that are, the roller coaster ride of the founder journey is very real. There is blood, sweat, and tears, sometimes every hour for 8 hours straight. But um, yeah, it's been it's fast, and I've never held a job. Jayesh and I always joke we've never held jobs this long. So we're doing something right if we're still here.
Yes. Oh, I love it. So you mentioned during your introduction or your journey there about your experience and the different types of product type. What specifically about that compelled you to use that experience and the feelings and whatever else came with it to say there has to be a better way? What if, or how could we, or whatever questions it was you were asking? What was that? Was it wholly negative, some positives, confusion, weirdness? How did that go?
That's a good question. I think it's a whole melting pot of a lot of different things. So my own personal journey, you mentioned, it in the intro was my mother came to Canada. She's an immigrant from Mexico. We had very, very little. And I remember as a competitive swimmer growing up that there were many times where we would go to the food bank and period care, specifically tampons, was something that I needed but didn't always have access to. Um,
Mhm.
so then when there were gaps, I would always, I would ask friends for some. But I didn't have there wasn't a name for that. Now in this position, I know like period poverty does exist in Canada. 1 in 3 women under the age of 25 have a hard time um, um, affording period care and having access to it. And so there was a reflection of that experience for me. And as an athlete at a very high level, I was for 8+ years, I was never asked about my menstrual cycle once
Yeah.
in my whole coaching, fitness, athletic journey. And then having had, as an adult, have been in a place where I felt like I could put something into the world that I feel solves my problem, but also solves other people's problems. So I chatted with lots of friends, as you do when you first start a company, and just trying to gather that anecdotal data about like what's your experience like? What's your experience like? And the results were it was this like thing that you tolerated. Nobody really connected to any of the brands that are out on the market. And I was like, I don't feel like it's that big of a reach to create something that actually stands for something meaningful, creates a good product that, has one job, which is, take care of, the period care blood and make sure that it works and build from there. And so I think it just I mean, I always like to attack a problem head on. And so when I see a clear path forward and I can see this is the drive, I mean, you don't have all the answers, you don't have the full vision, but you have an idea of what your next step is. And that was where I was like, I really feel like we could have something here. We can make meaningful impact. Um, we could build something here that actually gives back to our communities. I can solve a problem for myself. I have 2 young daughters. I want them to be able to be proud of what mom does, and I want them to be able to have products that I'm proud of them using. And so it was just a combination of a lot of things. And like most things, there's like a time where it all comes together. And I just feel like that was a moment for Joni.
Definitely sounds like it. And even having that label, that ability to be able to talk at a conscious level about period poverty and the fact that it's a real thing. When you say food bank, one of the last things I would ever think of would be anything other than consumable food. But
Yeah.
there are other things that people who are on, who are in difficult times and in need of help and care that would need. And I just like when you said it there, for me, it's just one of these ignorance moments where I'm thinking there's still a lot to learn about that. And then it's difficult enough growing up through your teens, being in a competitive sport that requires your body to be in the best shape it can be because millimeters are separating winners
Hmm.
from people who don't win, and all the distractions and such that could come from that, and then having to, I was going to say borrow, that's a horrible example, but having to get to
Yeah.
be gifted and ask for from friends just so that you're not in a compromising position. That must have been a difficult situation for you.
Yeah. I mean, it was just my reality at the time, and so you
Yeah,
live through it. But one of the things I really like to help raise awareness on, it's often people, what you do see at these not just food banks, but any type of shelter or places where people donate to. It's often this idea of like people will buy um, often the lowest cost item, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but like they're pads that are like super super thick. Um, there and sometimes they don't buy tampons. You don't get tampons donated at all. But I mention this because I really think it's important when it comes to managing your menstrual cycle. A level of dignity comes from being able to choose what products works for you. Not everyone can use a product that's insertable. Not everyone has access to clean drinking water in Canada to be able to use a reusable product. So being able to have a level of
yeah,
dignity to say, I'm going to I get to pick the product that works best for me. But not only that, but this is why Joni donates a lot. We donate at least 2% for B Corp, but we want people who not can't necessarily afford it not to be just, the idea is like, well, just take it, you have what you need, just be happy with it. You should have products that are good for you too. There should be a level of dignity to have quality products. I truly believe everyone should have access to quality products. And so I really talk about that a lot um, in trade shows and the work that we do, because it's not just a matter of donations and then there you go, you have something, use toilet paper. It's the dignity that comes from choosing, again, what works best for your body. That's really important to us at Joni as well.
definitely. It's such a poignant word, dignity, and
Hmm.
sometimes it can be used in a context that's not befitting of the conversation in and of itself. I can feel the passion. I can feel the energy when you're saying that, almost as if you're recounting or recollecting times when people have not been afforded that, maybe even yourself or friends or family or colleagues and such. It's such an incredibly important thing. Let's switch gears for a second to the business side of things. So how you and I got connected was I saw a former guest of the podcast comment on a LinkedIn post of yours, April Hickey. Shout out to April, who
April, love you.
yeah,
She's
yeah,
amazing.
and April had said, congratulations, so proud of you. I can't remember exactly what it was, but you had been confirmed to have the products in Walmart
Oh,
across,
yes.
I believe it was across Canada at the time,
Actually, yeah. Yep.
and and I, living in a certain bubble, you only see what the algorithm sends you at times, and so thankfully April and I were connected. I connected with you, and you were so kind and gracious to agree to come on and tell your story. How do you get from I have a situation or a circumstance and an idea. I've just been introduced to this guy who equally has a certain passion and some skill sets and talent and passion around that, to within 6 years getting yourself on the shelves of one of, if not the most recognized retail brand in the entire world.
Oh, I mean, so much of it is not logical. Like you can't plan a lot of it. You have the best set of plans, and then it pivots, and then they're out the window. I think I'll be fully honest, and I think this is important to be fully transparent about too. Going back to our values, is a lot of times, when we're on podcasts and we're talking about success and people are listening to it, they're like, oh man, I'm not there. Like, what am I doing wrong? And the reality is, we did a lot of things wrong and it was a really hard grind. We didn't pay ourselves for the first 4 years. We put everything back into Joni. We worked full-time jobs so that we can support our families and pay, like, feed our kids and pay our bills. Um, but we took a series of steps and planted seeds every year with this deep belief that we were going in the right direction. And the signal that we were seeing was showing us signs. Yes, you are going in the right direction. Hang in there. So first year, we made $30,000 in our first year. Launched in 2020. I feel like we should write that year off. It was crazy for everybody. But like,
Yeah, it
if you
was a
think about that, it was not a rocket ship by any means. It's like most people would be like, shut the doors, like that's it. But we made another year work, and we had a really hard time getting funding, and so we did a crowdfunding campaign to keep ourselves alive, and that was really successful, and that gave us a signal that our customers really wanted this. And so it's a series of small steps. A lot of it doesn't make sense at the time. It could be a lot of big bets that you're like, well, if this pays off, great. If not, then at least we tried. And in terms of the Walmart launch, we retail has always been a big part of our strategy because of the accessibility piece at Joni's that we're big on. So it's great to have a great product, but if it's not priced at a level where most people can afford it or available across the country, even in remote communities, then for us, it's not accessible. So we really like to work with partners that help us bring that accessibility. And Walmart's just been such a fantastic partner, especially for Canadian women-led businesses, and they're really keen on B Corp businesses too. So we were able to go to Toronto and pitch, and it was quite a fantastic event, and they took us in with open arms, and we launched over 250 stores across the country and growing on shelves. And so we see the data, like in a category that's we're this big in a massive category against these bigger players. We're slowly gaining some traction with awareness, and so it's just really exciting. And I'm just it's a team. It's not me. Like, we got an amazing team. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Absolutely, absolutely, it does. And it's not just Walmart that you're in. If you visit the Joni website, I see a lot of very prevalent brands there that you have partnerships or affiliations with that you're getting the word out through different distribution channels.
Yeah, we're in over just under 2,000 doors in Canada, and we are
Wow.
growing. So for a retailer standpoint, we're really growing. We're available online at getjoni.com, Amazon, Costco.ca. But I think the other channel that most people aren't aware of is our B2B commercial channel. So we created the world's first smart period care dispenser. We saw a problem in the market. Again, we were like, how is it that we still have these dispensers? I don't know if you've ever seen them, Gary, but they're like literally some of like the 1960s like Tampax dispensers in some of these washrooms, and it's comical, but not. And going away from not being able to afford it, but being a woman or a person who menstruates who might be caught off guard, which happens quite often. The stats are 87% of people who menstruate get caught off guard. And all of us can relate to this. And you have to have the right coins. And if you have the right coins, you have to make sure that the dispenser is not empty. And so we ended up creating, again, thinking about, can we make an impact here? We created this smart dispenser that allows facilities teams to see which dispensers need to be refilled. So it saves on labor costs for them, but it also, for the end user, allows them to have product available when they need it.
Yeah, again, that opportunity to see, feel, experience a problem, take the problem or the challenge and turn it into something, okay, well, what would this look like if we're starting today? How can we make it easy for everyone involved in the actual process in and of itself, including, most importantly, the customers, to be able to access that? How, who came up with that idea?
We created our first prototype for a dispenser in partnership with a university because they were really struggling to find a solution that worked for them. And we didn't have the cash flow for them. So we said, we feel like we can create something for you. Are you willing to prepay for these? And they did. They believed in us enough that they prepaid for the dispensers. So we created the dispensers, for to solve the problems they were having. Then we realized it's not just one customer that had this issue, there were many customers. And so our Model V dispenser, this latest version, was about 4 or 5 prototypes from that original version. And this one incorporates a backend technology that has that dashboard. So again, it was really listening to our customers and then really listening to the signal that we were hearing in the market of what's working, what's not working. And so we really leaned into it when we found that it was working.
Fabulous. And once again, teamwork makes the dream work. You know, you have a lot of allies in this particular space. I imagine that's only going to grow over time, where people start to see the momentum, see and feel the values in action, and then, you know, how can I help? Have you thought about this in this environment? And then you're getting creativity from community, essentially. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best, fastest growing companies stay really close to their customer, right? Pay really close attention to the information that they're getting back. And so we've really done that all along the way. And it will continue to do that because I think that's what allows us to move quickly. But also not only move quickly, but create products and solutions that then really solve a problem. It's not just another Me Too product. It's not another Alibaba something or other. It's just, it's actually technology. It's IP built in Canada that that creates more jobs, that contributes to our community in a bigger way. That's what we really love to do.
Absolutely incredible. So just to go back to the give back model, you mentioned the percentage of give back. Is there a specific target for the give back? Is it distributed among various players or parties that you're passionate about, or is there a specific, strategic target or focus for your give back model?
So our commitment is a B Corp commitment, which is we donate at least 2% of our revenues to into nonprofits that move menstrual justice forward. So to date, that has mostly meant the contribution of products to really amazing nonprofit partners like Moontime Connections, which are an incredible organization working with really remote communities across Canada. The Period Purse, which is one of the first large organizations in Ontario to really drive that menstrual justice movement forward. Food Banks Canada, which is just so incredible for so many communities in so many different ways. We work with a lot of these amazing nonprofits, and it's also a symbiotic relationship in a way. They grow and we grow, and then our impact grows. So it's something that we've really played close attention to, and we don't ever see it as a marketing slogan. I think it's really important that we see it as a deep part of our business model. And so when we're talking to our nonprofit partners and we're donating product, could be cash to them too, we're really asking them, how can we help you? What works best for your community? And that's worked really well for us.
So 6 years in, no payment for 4 of those 6 years, working full-time jobs, that's all difficult in and of itself. Outside of those practical, tactical challenges that you were facing, what's been the biggest challenge that you didn't see or foresee to this point thus far in terms of building the business and getting the recognition and getting the opportunities that you've earned thus far?
I think that the biggest problem we've experienced, I don't know if it's stigma, but there's definitely an element of, maybe it is stigma when it comes to fundraising. We were told that there's already enough solutions on the market. So why do we need another period care solution? And I think it's because, these people making decisions don't necessarily have lived experiences with menstruation. Or we would get investors that would be like, well, I have no idea whether or not, what to do here. Let me ask my wife. And in the end, like, this is a business and we are here to be profitable. And the interesting thing about them not seeing the opportunity, when literally 51% of the population are women and 30% menstruate, and this is it happens every month, and or things like you can't say vagina on Meta because you get blocked, or vulva, and these are pretty key words for a period care company, but we have to get permission.
Yeah.
to say that, and we don't use euphemisms, so it's very important for us to use the right terminology. So you know, when you're thinking about digital marketing strategy, well, now you have to kind of play into how Meta operates, and so that can be impactful as well. And um, so I mean, I think like anything, there's not one big thing. It's just a series of, you know, things that come up that you, in some ways, we have taken them as opportunities, whether
Mm.
that's an opportunity to help educate people around, you know, why things are the way they are and why they potentially should be different. So the term feminine hygiene is a perfect example. We all are familiar with the term
Yeah.
feminine hygiene. It's a euphemism. It is literally on the banners of most retail stores, in the period care aisle. And, you know, it wasn't until I started Joni where I was researching the history of menstrual care and realized how feminine hygiene came to be. And the story is wild. It started because Lysol was creating a douche for women because at the time there was something called the Comstock Act that prevented you from being able to talk about reproductive health, including menstruation, in any way. It was banned. Um, and this was like in the, you know, early 1900s. And so this women weren't allowed to have birth control. And so douching was a euphemism for birth control, and Lysol, the cleaning product that we're all
Yeah.
familiar with,
Yeah.
was the first douching product. And so marketers got really creative, and instead of skirting around the Comstock Act, they invented the word feminine hygiene. So it's a really fun exercise if you Google like origins of feminine hygiene, and you get to see all of the ads that come up because they're wild. They're like, is your husband distant? Maybe it's a you problem. Like the shame and the stigma that
Whoa.
is like, it's wild. So then you think about, okay, that was the foundation of this industry, and that's what we're building on. And so we know we really, when we talk to people and they're like, what do you do? It's like period care, and they're like, oh, period care, like feminine hygiene. Like, oh, you have to really start to like, you know, you meet people where they are
Yeah.
and then try to take them a little bit further and help they kind of expand their world in this area. And so going back to your question, there's not like one big roadblock. And I think most founders could probably, maybe not, but for us, it was a series of a lot of things that we had to overcome. But we're trying to see it as, you know, things that we can use for our advantage in many ways. You kind of have to, otherwise you go crazy.
Yeah. Information you didn't have before, and a new stigma, or a new approach to a stigma, or a new reaction to the stigma as well. And it's such a fascinating thing that, and thank you for the history lesson there, because it's things just exist, and that's just it.
Yeah.
And you would look for that in a shop, and in a store, and that's, for me, that's the stigma part was why I was so excited to have this conversation today, because I grew up
Mm.
with four sisters.
Mm.
I don't recall ever having a conversation about that. Why would it? And I was the youngest. Why would they talk to me about it? But even I don't recall it being like a normalized conversation in
Yeah.
in the household. I do recall my mum sending me to the shop for a loaf of bread and some pads,
Oh,
Doctor
okay.
Doctor Whites they were called, and I'm
Oh,
just I'm just a kid, so I'm like, I've just got some pads, and it wasn't until I was walking home one day and someone was like, aha, and I'm like, it's bread. What are you talking about? And I had no idea. It was just a
right.
a thing that I did, and then as I've grown into an adult, and have many positive relationships with women over the years, including family, friends, and colleagues and such like that. Never part of a conversation, and kind of why would it be part of it? Obviously, there's
Yeah.
private, and of course, but that ability to be able to recognize the potential inconveniences, the 80+% of people being caught,
Yeah.
in a surprise situation, and then being in a very difficult situation. I think back to Wimbledon, which is not long
Mm.
finished by the time that we're recording this, and for the first time in Wimbledon history, they allowed women to wear black shorts under their skirts,
Right.
for a period of
Non-whites. Yeah.
for protection,
Yeah.
and this is 2026,
Yeah.
so, and just back to the one comment that you made earlier, where there's enough period care products in the marketplace. Why do we need another one? if that was the case, there would be no such thing as any founder from this point forward ever in the history of founding.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it's
It's
such
wild.
it really is. Well, it's
Yeah.
such ignorance. So I'm hoping by virtue of this conversation that we have an opportunity to really put the word out there a wee bit more in terms of my audience and the ability to hopefully have my friends and colleagues of the male variety to be able to empathize with it, absorb the messaging that's within it and have these open conversations to make sure that those that are in their circle that they care about have what they need and have access
Yeah.
to what they need and know and understand what the options and opportunities are too.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Well, I love what you said about your experience as a little boy. You got the bread and you got the pad and you thought nothing of it, right?
Mhm.
And it wasn't until someone pointed and laughed and was like, "Oh my gosh, you got pad," and you learned
Mhm.
shame and stigma around it. It's a
Yeah,
learned behavior. We're not born with that because this isn't a natural bodily function. So it's really important for us at Joni to, that's why we always talk about showing what's possible when the world exists with menstrual justice. So what does that look like? It means having conversations with our kids like about menstruation like we do about nosebleeds or what we do about cuts and bruises or how we do fevers. Like it's part of our health care. It's just a normalized conversation.
yeah,
It's about everyone having this conversation because it's how we all got here.
yeah,
It's not scary. And I think that we're getting there. And what I love to see is I often do a lot of demos at retail stores or at trade shows. And I will ask, because we give out samples, and I will typically ask, instead of, do you want a pad or a tampon? I will ask, do you menstruate or do you know anyone who menstruates? And typically, if I see if it's a man, I'll be like, do you know anyone who menstruates? Because I want to include them in this conversation.
yeah,
And I would say about 80% of the time, they're like, well, yeah, of course I do. My wife, my daughter, my sister. And then I would say, these are organic pads. And they're like, great, I'll give it to them. No problem. A small percentage will be are kind of like taken off guard and they have to think about it. And some say no. And some say no, very small percentage who are like, no, like they're totally offended. But I love it's okay because what it does is it makes them think. And so there was one time
yeah,
when I was at this retail store and this man's like, "Oh no," and he walks away. And I'm like, "That's okay." He must have been thinking about it the entire time he was in that store because he came back and he was like, "Actually, I thought about it. I have two nieces." And so I gave him two and I was like, "That is why we do this because
yeah,
now he's taking those products to his nieces. Hey, someone gave these to me, thought you might want them. The nieces are going to be like, oh, my uncle brought me pads.
yeah,
That's kind of cool. There's a whole process in how we destigmatize this conversation, and it's happening. So I'm super excited for it, and I think that what you said was a really really great point as to when we question why we feel the way we feel about it. A lot of time it's learned. And
yeah.
so let's think about how do we unlearn some of that narrative and some of those stigmas because I think the world's going to be a better place because of it.
I completely agree. Absolutely, completely agree. As you know, Linda, this is called The Best You. I like to take this opportunity to ask every guest what's one regular practice that Linda employs to give you the best opportunity to be the best version of yourself each and every day?
Well, I would say recently, because of the stage of life where I am, is I'm lifting weights. It honestly is like it clears my head, and it's my lifesaver. So I would say lift heavy, ladies.
Yes, indeed, indeed. My partner is on the weights train right now too, just
Nice.
making sure that she's getting to a point where she knows what's good for her body and knows how to look after herself as she goes into the next season.
Yeah.
And I'm very very glad that she's doing that thing. Before I let you go, Linda, what's next? What can we expect next from Joni?
Well, we have a very exciting launch coming up next month. So that's a product that we've been working on quite a bit, and it's quite innovative. So that'll be launched next month in August. But in terms of our growth, our B2B dispensers, so our Joni Model V dispenser is rolling out to thousands of locations across Canada and now into the US. And so I would say see us in the wild. You'll see us on retail shelves. You might see us at the libraries, at dispensers. You might see us at the airports. And so if you do, take a photo and tag us. I love to see Joni in the wild.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to keep a more close eye out now to the places that I would go that I would be able to
Yeah,
see it, and certainly would absolutely be delighted to do that. And this is an open offer at any point, Linda. If there's anything I can ever do for you, anything I can ever do for Joni and the brand and the future expansion, please don't hesitate to reach out. I would be more than thrilled to be able to help.
that's really sweet. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it. And likewise, I think what you're doing is great. Appreciate it.
Linda, before I let you go, where can people find out more about you and more about Joni?
Yeah, so Joni is getjoni.com. That's the best place to find out more about us, our products. We are on Amazon, we're at Walmart, like we talked about, but the best spot is getjoni.com. Also follow us on Instagram. We're at get_Joni. We put a lot of educational content out. We have a lot of fun with our team on there, so please follow. And I'm at maker.co if you want to follow my journey personally.
Wonderful. Excellent. I knew this was going to be an education and a revelation. I am so thrilled and delighted and honoured that you took the time to have this conversation with me today. I have a feeling it's not going to be the last time that you and I chat in our lifetime, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the journey, seeing the growth, seeing the future expansion, and seeing the great things that you're doing. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Thank you, Gary. Such an honor, such a joy. I had a lot of fun.